Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Gatewood, and I am the Communications and Marketing Director at CFRE International. Thank you so much for being with us today for the CFRE Exam webinar, Setting Yourself Up for Success. All attendees are on mute, and we have a question pane. You are welcome to submit your questions at any time through that. We have two members of our certification team, Paul and Christine, on the back end, and they will be answering your questions as they come in. And we'll also stop periodically and discuss some of the more common questions that they're seeing. Today, I would like to start by thanking Connolly and Associates Fundraising in Baltimore for their promotional support. I know a number of you registered from the emails that they sent out, and we're very glad to have you with us. I'll begin the webinar with a couple of FAQs. One is we are recording today's webinar, and you will be emailed a link in about 24 hours to the email that you used to register. The application cost for the CFRE is $700 US if you are a member of a participating organization. A participating organization is an industry association that we have a formal partnership with, and these include the Association for Fundraising Professionals, the Association for Healthcare Philanthropy, Canadian Association of Gift Planners, Charitable Gift Planners. There are 30, so if you are interested in looking at that list, you can find it in the About Us section of our website. If you are not a member of a participating organization, the cost is $875 US. I'm going to talk about a number of tools today that are available in the study aid section of our website. So you'll hear me talk about the glossary, the study plan template, test content outline, all of these things. They are accessible to you at any time through the website. We also have two fantastic CFREs with us who we are going to hear from in the second half of today's presentation. They will be sharing with you their advice for preparing for the CFRE exam. So definitely make sure that you are here to get all of that good information. So I'll start by a really quick overview of what the CFRE credential is. We are the only globally recognized accredited credential for fundraising professionals. So whether you earn our credential in Vancouver or Buenos Aires or Los Angeles, it all means the same thing. It's a global credential, right? So this is great because we know the world is becoming more global in many ways. If you work in one country, but maybe you have corporate partners or major donors in another country, having the CFRE shows that you have met those global criteria in ethical best practice fundraising. We've been on the scene for 41 years, so we've got a very long track record in the sector. And we are here for ethical best practice fundraising. So when we talk about what this credential is showing, it is that you have met a set of standards in ethical best practice fundraising. And that is what our exam is testing, your understanding of ethical best practice fundraising. A lot of people think, hey, Ashley, things are ticking along fine at my job. Becoming a CFRE seems like it's going to be extra work. There's a cost involved. Why would I do this? And I think that's a fair question. We always want to invest in ourselves. We always want to be the best employee that we can be. We always want to have the most up-to-date knowledge. But there are many reasons why now, especially in January 2023, that it is wise for you to start working towards this goal. One is recruiters. If you are looking to change jobs this year, or if you are worried that perhaps at your organization there could be redundancies made, people laid off, having the CFRE really makes you stand out with recruiters. We hear this very often where people will say, I became a CFRE, updated it on my LinkedIn, and within 2 days a recruiter called me, and that didn't happen before. If you were on one of our webinars last year, Judy, a CFRE in British Columbia, said that she's been a CFRE for some time and she still has a very steady stream of people calling. Two is reporting to a CFRE. When people become CFREs, we know that they often then encourage the people that they manage to pursue the credential. And if you are applying for jobs and it might be reporting to a director of development who has their CFRE, they may be looking through that lens at the hiring process. We have heard many times, even from one of our CFREs that's on the call with us later today, that even at their organization, that when they interview, they have one stack, virtual stack of CVs and resumes for those who are CFREs, and then one for those who aren't, and they begin the interview process through the CFRE stack, right? So you definitely want to have every advantage in your back pocket when you're on the job hunt, right? Also, to be recession ready. We know that this is probably going to be a difficult year for donors. You may have seen there's been some research out of Canada about generosity dropping in some areas. You want to make sure that no matter what happens this year, because it's going to be another wild ride, right? Like they all have been lately, but if you think that you're going to have to do more with less, you're going to want the best body of knowledge possible, right? So you can meet your targets. And I always say that you want to become a CFRE before you need to be a CFRE, right? If you find yourself looking for a job on Monday, you don't want to think, oh, now I should start working towards my CFRE, right? You want to already have that. You want to have it before you need to meet with some great difficulties at your organization or your training staff, or you are back out looking for a job. Also, having your CFRE in the US and Canada especially gives you very excellent power when it comes to negotiating your salary. We know that all of your power in negotiating a salary is before you sign an employment contract, right? So you want to have everything that you possibly can on your side when you do that. Don't leave money on the table, right? We already know that many people, unfortunately, are underpaid. You do not want to have to leave a dollar on the table. This is some great research from AFP last year, and they found that CFREs earn 5 to 16% more than non-CFREs with comparable experience in the US and Canada. So that $700 application fee is an investment that will come back to you many, many fold over the course of your career. All right, and so with that, I'm going to launch our first poll today, and this is asking if you have started studying for the CFRE exam. So let us know if you've started, maybe you're even done. All right, I'm gonna close the poll in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, and let me share these results out. Okay, awesome. So the 2/3 of people haven't yet started. Perfect. We're gonna take you through the A to Z of it. For those of you who are done, applause to you. That's excellent. We'll be covering everything you need to know for when you sit and take the exam. All right, so let's get back into our deck here. All right, so the exam creation, the questions are applicable globally. So no matter where you take this exam, whether you take it in Denver or you take it in Toronto, it is the exact same exam with the same questions. They apply everywhere. These are not North American questions. These are not US-based questions. These are global questions. They apply no matter where you are. We refresh the questions periodically, so we ensure that the content of the exam is always current, right? This isn't an exam we created 15 years ago and we never took a look at updating any questions, right? This is something that we are making sure aligns with the body of knowledge that fundraising professionals currently need to excel in their jobs. The exam is available in English and it uses universally understood terms. And I'll talk a little bit more about the glossary later, but we are very open and transparent about the language on the exam. We have a glossary so that you can make yourself familiar with the definitions. They're going to be familiar to you. There's nothing that comes out of left field, but we're not using terms that are grounded in any one particular geographic area. Now, taking the exam It is available during 4 test windows every year. And essentially, you can take the exam any month you like, except for December, because who would do that to themselves, right? It's just too crazy of a time. But if you want to take the exam in the January 15th to March 15th test window, right? You say, I'm going to start 2023 off right. I'm going to become a CFRE. I'm just going to scratch this goal off my list. We highly recommend that you submit your application before that January 15th deadline. That's going to be key to helping you ensure that you get the exam date you want. When you submit your application, you have to pick a test window. So these 4 options will be available to you, and you will select the one that you want before you submit your application. Once Paul reviews and approves your application, he will send you an email with instructions for scheduling your exam. So at that point, you will need to figure out with your schedule the actual date that you wish to sit for the exam. There are 2 ways that you can take this exam. One is from your home or office, and that option is available 7 days a week, and the in-person test centers tend to be available 6 days a week, and we'll talk a little bit more about that down the line. The exam has 200 questions, and it is looking for the best answer regarding the best practice. This is really important to think about because this exam is not asking you how you fundraise at your job, right? Your organization may be amazing, but there may be a best practice that they're not following because you have a cranky executive director who says something's got to be done the way it's been done the last 28 years or whatever, right? So you are answering and looking at this exam through the eyes of ethical best practices. Every question is multiple choice. There are no essay questions. There are no open-ended questions. And you have 4 answer options per question, which is great news because that means that the correct answer is right on the screen and you just have to select it. There's no rote memorization. You're not being asked to memorize 400 definitions or, a whole bunch of verbatim concepts and theories. It's nothing like that. This is about applying your knowledge of fundraising, right? Not how much have you memorized. All right, so we're going to look at a practice question here. This question does not appear on the live exam. It was taken from one of our study tools. And this question is asking, in preparation of the case statement, which of the following pieces of important information should be included first? 1, specific objectives and goals of the organization. 2, mission statement of the organization. 3, environmental issues affecting the organization. Or 4, specific problems and needs addressed by the organization. So I'll give you a minute to think on that. All right, everybody have your answer? And the correct answer is the mission statement of the organization. That is the best practice, to have the mission statement of the organization be the first piece there. All right, so that gives you a flavor, right, for what the questions are formatted like, what it's like to look at those 4 multiple choice answers. And we have a second question that we'll look at together a little bit later. The exam is entirely computer-based, and it is written at the 5-year practice level. You can take the exam once you have 3 years of professional fundraising experience, but know that the actual exam is written at the 5-year practice level. So if you have fewer than 5 years, you will need to study a little bit more. You will have 4 hours to take the exam, and the really good news for you there is that last year, the average length of time it took people to take the exam was under 3 hours. So we are generous in the amount of time that we give you. You should not be rushed as long as you're able to keep yourself moving. All right, so now let's look at the structure of this exam. You will be shown questions 1 through 100, okay? So it's a computer-based exam. you're going to be looking at one question per screen, and you will be given access to the first 100 questions. You can move back and forth within those 100 questions. When you have finished them and you are happy with your answers, so if you're going to double check anything, you've already double checked it, you're totally like, yep, these 100, great, ready to roll. You'll then click a box on your screen that says Start Optional 10-Minute Break. Once you click that box, you can no longer get back to those first 100 questions. They are locked and loaded. And that is for exam security, because on this 10-minute break, you can get up to use the restroom, take medication. They don't want people looking up answers in a book and going back to those first 100 questions. So once they're done, they're done. Your 10-minute break, you have the option to take the entire 10 minutes if you want, or if you want it to be shorter, there'll be a box, just end break, and then you can get back into the exam. After this break, you will be given access to questions 101 to 200, right? So 200 total questions on the exam in 2 parts of 100 each. And it will be the same thing. Those questions 101 to 200, you can zip through them, right? So if you get hung up on question 119, but question 174 jogs your memory, you can go back, right? And then once you complete the 200th question, you've checked your work, you're happy with it, then you will end the exam, and that'll be it. All right. The exam is scored on a range from 200 to 800, and 500 is the passing score, which is great because you don't have to get an 800. You need to be sure that you have a 500. The 500 is a firm 500. If you get a 498 and you call our office and you ask if there's anything we can do, we cannot. We are accredited. We have to have the exact same rules in play for everybody. So that 500 is a firm passing score. And it's not graded on a curve, right? How other people did has no relation to how your exam is scored. This is just you and you alone. The exam is divided into 6 knowledge domains that you can see here on your screen, and you can see the percentage that they make up of the exam, right? So you can see here, securing the gift and relationship building are almost half the exam. Do not skimp on studying those areas. Definitely devote your study time there. And you'll probably also notice that the number of items adds up to 175. So on the exam, there are 200 questions and 175 count towards your score. 25 are pre-exam questions that we are testing to make sure they are psychometrically sound before they officially make the cut and become part of the CFRE exam. So think of it as your way of paying it forward for everyone who's going to take the exam after you, and everyone who took the exam before you, they answered these 25 or a different set of 25 pre-test questions. If you get a pre-test question item right, and you get an actual exam question wrong, we cannot Rochambeau those points. So those 25 questions, they will not count towards your score because we have not validated them as being psychometrically sound yet. So it's one thing you don't really have to worry about. Just do your best on every question. Those 6 knowledge domains we break down into the nitty-gritty for you in our test content outline. This is available as a PDF on our website, and this is really going to be your next step after today's webinar. You will print off the test content outline and highlight any of these bullet points that you have not directly worked in yourself, or that you don't feel that you could confidently answer an exam question on. And that is going to tell you what you need to study. Okay, so a lot of people think, well, I don't even know how I would get started studying with this. This is the key, right? This test content outline, we're very open and transparent with what information you need to be familiar with. This is what has been identified through, we do a job task analysis every 5 years, being what is being used by fundraising professionals in their day-to-day work. So the good news for you is that a lot of this will feel very familiar because a lot of it is stuff that you're probably doing already. We did make some updates to the test content outline that went into effect for the exam this year. If you have already studied on the 2022 test content outline, the first thing I'll say to you is don't panic. The updates were minor. So I'm just going to talk about them now. There's a little bit that's been added about social media, crowdfunding, environmental influences on giving. We had DEIA represented in the prior exam form, but there has been a more robust amount of information there, acknowledging the increasing importance of this to the success of the sector. So those are the updates. If you've already started studying, don't sweat it. Have a look at the new test content outline. It's going to look super familiar. And again, this test content outline is calculated on 175 questions. The sort of really super down and dirty fast, what did y'all update? Pretty much securing the gift and relationship building, they were half the exam before, they're still roughly half the exam now. There was a slight drop in volunteer involvement questions and a minor uptick in current and prospective donor research. So that's just laddering up to what we found through our survey about what folks are doing. If you are wondering, how do I know what books to read for this? Well, we've made it easy for you. We have a resource reading list with 8 books, and most people read 1 to 3. Do not expect that you will have to read 8 books. You could if you wanted, but it's not required. We have on the website, you can see that there are the 6 knowledge domains, and we tell you which books ladder up to which knowledge domains. These 3 that you can see the little thumbnail covers for, these are comprehensive texts. They're quite popular, especially this Achieving Excellence in Fundraising book, the 5th edition. This is a very popular book in the sector, and as such, it is a very popular book that people use to study for the exam. Because it's comprehensive, it does address all 6 knowledge domains. So if you want to buy a one and done textbook, this may be the one for you. I'm really frugal, and I'm always trying to find hacks for how to do stuff cheaper. If you're like me, obviously you can look at your library having this book, ask any CFREs you know if they could lend it to you. But if you, both of those don't pan out for you for some reason, you can actually rent this book from Amazon. So if you don't want to pay the full freight cost of this book, you can rent it. And the great thing about renting a book, as you can see right below that red box that came up, is that it has a due date. If you're a person that has a hard time motivating yourself, or the only thing that motivates you is a good deadline, having a deadline to get that book back in may also play in your favor. All right, so we have gone through quite a lot there, and now we'll take a break for a second and check in with Paul, our certification manager, to see which questions have come in.
Thanks, Ashley. So our first question is, if you're looking to take the exam in June, should we apply now or wait till the April 15th deadline? In other words, is there a way to apply now for a future exam date?
Yeah, absolutely. I would get your application in as soon as possible, because the testing dates and times can actually fill up. Our test center partner, Pearson VUE, they don't just administer our exam, they administer thousands of exams. And so if you say, I know that in June, this week is the week for me to take this exam, I would get that application as soon as possible to ensure that you get the date and time that best work for you.
Great. Is there an installment plan for paying the fee, and are practice questions included in the application fee?
Good question. So we do not have an installment plan. The payment is due at one time. If that is something that you might find difficult, we have had a board member who highly recommends that every pay period you decide what you're going to put towards that fee, in a savings account or off to the side somewhere. Also keep in mind that 54% of people have their employer pay part or all of that application fee. So if you haven't yet talked to your employer, you're a fundraiser, all about asking for support and timing conversations. It's a conversation worth having. The practice questions are not included in the application fee, and I will show you later in the presentation today where you can find those.
Great. So can you provide some clarification on the test content outline? What does DEIA stand for?
Oh, sure. It stands for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access. And the addition of that further reflects the conversations that have been going on in the fundraising space over recent years and ensuring that the exam takes that into account and that people have that knowledge because obviously it's incredibly important for our workplaces and our donors.
Great. And further to the test content outline, where can one secure a copy of that?
Yeah, if you go to CFRE.org and you see the menu that says study aids, click that, and in the drop down there will be the link to the test content outline. And yeah, it's super easy. There's a PDF version you can print, and then there's just a web screen version.
Great. Let's see. What is there an option to take the exam remotely?
Yes, there is. That is an excellent question, and I will talk about that a little bit later.
Perfect. This question is related to preparing. How do you join study sessions?
Yeah, so on our website, we have a study group section. So again, if you go to CFRE.org and then you see that menu for study aids, click that and you'll see study groups in the drop down. And I also have a slide about study groups coming up. So thank you everyone for those great questions. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
All right, and we will have another question break a little bit later. The vocabulary of the exam is all found on the glossary. Again, this is in the study aid section of the website. Print this off, read it, but you're not being asked to memorize it, right? You want the definitions to feel familiar, you're confident what they mean, but you don't have to memorize this. This is really a great tool because we all know that there can be regional differences. There can be a lot of things where, you know, a gift or a donation, right, like mean the same thing. So this should be your first stop when you study. Read that glossary. Here is an example study schedule. Now, this is saying that you're going to study 2 hours a day for 4 days a week. The number one thing I want to tell you is to think about your study time like you think about saving money, right? There are two ways that people typically save money. One is they get their paycheck and they throw a predetermined amount in a savings account. And the second way is people get their paycheck and they say, whatever is left at the end of this pay period, I'm going to put into my savings account. And which avenue do you think yields people saving the most money, right? The people who do it right off the top. My point is, don't say, I'm going to study with whatever free time I wind up with this week, because that's a really easy way to not study. Say, I'm going to pick, 4 days this week, and I'm going to do 2-hour blocks, or, whatever makes sense for you, but keep that momentum going, make it a priority. So in this example, in week 1, you would read the glossary and you would study to whatever you had highlighted on the test content outline in the current and prospective donor research domain. And then each of the following weeks, you would look at the following domains, 1 per week. On week 7, you would re-review whatever knowledge domain you had the most difficulty with or involved a lot of areas that you have not yet directly worked in. On the 8th week, review the glossary and your notes a final time, right? This isn't rocket science, it's very straightforward. There's no wrong way or right way to set your study schedule. I've heard someone say they studied for 11 months. I've heard someone say they studied 6 consecutive weekends before the test date. They said, you know what, I'm just gonna, every Saturday and Sunday for 6 weekends, I'm just gonna get this thing done. And they did it. And they actually passed the first time. So do what makes sense for your life and your schedule, but just know there's not a wrong or a right way to do this. Well, the wrong way is to not do it well, right? To cut corners. We have a study plan template on the website. This is great if you really just think, thanks, Ashley, you've told me all this stuff and I still don't really feel like I know how to get started. This will walk you through step by step. It's got check boxes, so you can like, yep, did this, yep, did this. I highly recommend you get this. It's a PDF, just download it. How long should I study? This is a question we get all the time. And we did a survey with CFREs, right? So all people who successfully passed the exam. And we found that most people study 40 to 80 hours. If you have fewer than 5 years of experience in professional fundraising, study at least 80 hours. But keep in mind 40 to 80 hours, right? So this isn't like you have to say to your children, I love you, I'll see you in 4 months, right? This is something that you can absolutely do within the context of your life. So we had a great question come in about study groups. We do have a study group page on the website, so CFRE.org. I'm the broken record telling you go to the study aid section, and then you'll find the study group page there. You can start your own study group. A lot of people like to do that with people locally. You know, if you're a member of AFP or CGP, CAGP, that have local chapters, you may want to ask them to put something in their newsletter or LinkedIn, you know, a call, hey, I'm looking to start studying for the CFRE exam next month. Is there anybody else that might want to join me? Oops, here we go. All right, here we go. Practice question 2. Foundation prospects for an organization are best identified by the geographic scope of the foundation, its granting criteria, and the foundation's 1, board, 2, capacity for grants, 3, most recent award, or 4, previous giving history. So if you didn't see my answer come up for that, have a think on it. All right. And the answer is previous giving history, right? So when you are doing your research about a foundation and their likelihood of supporting you, you are going to want to take a very close look at the previous giving history. All right, so final poll today. Let's hope that this cooperates. Okay, and we're asking, when is the last time you took an exam? 0 to 5 years ago, 6 to 10 years ago, 11 to 15 years ago, or more than 15 years ago? All right, and I'll close the poll in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, and let's look at this together. All right, so the majority of people, about 40%, 5 years or fewer, but 20% more than 15 years ago. So keep in mind, if you think, geez, I haven't taken an exam in a long time and I'm going to be the only person working towards my CFRE and everybody else has taken an exam recently, that is not the case at all. We have people that have not taken an exam in 25 years that pass the CFRE exam. So don't let that scare you, that there's been a period of time since you last took an exam. All right, so we had a question come in about the practice questions that we've looked at today and where they can be found. So those are available via 2 avenues. One is the CFRE Practice Exam. This is a subscription product. So for 30 days and well, for $59.95 US, you'll get access unlimited for 30 days. So you can go in and take the practice questions as much as you like. There are over 300 questions in the bank. So it is a very robust tool. If you say, Ashley, you know, I highlighted the test content outline and I still didn't feel like I was 100% sure about what I knew and what I didn't know, the practice exam is a perfect way to assess your knowledge. Also, for all of those folks that haven't sat for an exam in a long time, if you want to just kind of get back in the test taking rhythm, people say that this is really useful for that it kind of cuts those jitters off because they've, you know, had some time to sit and actually take a multiple choice practice exam. And for 90 days, it's $99.95 US. One great way to use the practice exam is to take it. It's going to show you all the questions you got wrong. Study to ensure that you have the knowledge for those questions. Take the practice exam again to verify that you have absorbed everything that you need to know. All right, and that's where you can find it in the study aid section right there. The other place that we have practice questions is inside the CFRE Exam Compass Study Guide. This is $49.95 US. You can get a e-copy or a hard copy. I've heard that the hard copy, people prefer that one. It's got space for you to inventory your knowledge. It's got a whole bunch of test taking tips and practice questions as well. So now we are very fortunate that we are joined by two CFREs today who are going to tell you about how they prepared. And the first is Edna Meza Aguirre. She is based in Tucson, Arizona. So we're in the same city actually right now. And Edna has been a CFRE since 2016 and just joined our board this year. So Edna, are you able to turn on your webcam and audio? Oh, there we go. Okay, so we can't hear you. Hang on just one second. Okay, all right, great. Now we can hear you.
Okay, now you can hear me. All righty.
Yes.
Okay, good. Hello.
There
Yeah,
we go.
so one thing that I've had individuals tell me is that they don't have the time or the resources to take the exam and to become a CFRE. And I'd like to emphasize, no one has ever received their CFRE because they had a ton of time to study and a ton of cash. And also, no one's ever received their CFRE because they were able to somehow clairvoyant the questions. It's like any other exam we've taken. It requires preparation. So the practice exams are what I stress the most. It's what helped me when I was studying for the bar exam after I graduated from law school. And just getting that muscle memory. Many of us aren't in the habit of taking a lot of standardized exams. So it's good to get your mind and your body ready and just take them over and over and over again. So you get used to the timing of the exam. And to Ashley's point of preparation and making it a priority, I just decided that every day during my lunch hour, I would put on a do not disturb on my calendar and I would read material and take study exams. I did this working in a not-for-profit where for many of you, you'll realize it's really outrageous to say that you're taking your lunch hour by yourself while you're not doing work for the org. But I decided that's what I needed to do in order to really apply myself and do this. So every day during my lunch hour, and I would take weekends off. And I used the CFRE study guide that at the time was available. It was put out by AFP. But in the class that I'm teaching now, and I believe my students are on this webinar, I highly recommend this one. We're trying to watch the lighting there. The CFRE guide, it really covers every domain. And that's important because you have to put yourself into the mindset of what the exam is asking you. And the Compass Guide does beautifully with that. So next slide, please, Ashley.
Perfect,
Oh,
Edna.
sorry.
So we will hear from that's it. We will hear from you a little bit later.
Yeah.
And now we
Okay,
have
sorry. Yeah.
no, all good tips. Thank you very much. And so now, Dane, if you would like to turn on your camera and microphone.
Hi.
All right, you sound great. And so, Dane, you are coming to us from Toronto, and you have been a CFRE since 2018. You became a CFRE the same year I started working here, and it's been great working with you all these years. So, Dane, take it away and tell people how you prepared.
Yeah, for what it's worth, by the way, I wrote my CFRE exam right at the 3-year practice mark. So I was sort of under that threshold that Ashley sort of recommended, and I'm proof that you can do it, and because I did. So a couple of tips, and I think these are pretty reflective, but maybe I'll come at them just from another perspective. I think that the tools listed on the CFRE website, look, let's be real. It is the goal of CFRE International to have excellent qualified CFREs all around the world. So believe Ashley when she says that the organization is attempting to set you up for success on the website. And I recommend using the tools that make the most sense to you, either paid or free, on the CFRE website. that are listed on the website. They are listed on the website for a reason, because those are the relevant materials that some of the folks who are developing the questions refer to in developing the questions. And those are really, really valuable tools, whether that's a book list, whether that's the study guide, which is free, whether that's the practice exam, which is sort of my next point. All of them are designed to help you be successful. The practice exam, I'm going to come at this from an interesting perspective. The CFRE exam, Ashley referred to this earlier, asks questions that are based on best practice, not based on reality. Our realities are all different as fundraisers based on the organizations and the processes under which we all work every single day. The practice exam is taking a look at, in an ideal, perfect world, what is the best practice answer to the question in front of you? And that's a frame of mind that actually requires some repetition and your own practice to get into that frame of mind and frame of reference, because it's so easy to just revert to what we know best and answer questions that way. And so that is actually, to me, the most valuable aspect to use for use of the practice exam, is actually practice answering the questions. Less about the content, even for me it was anyways, less about the content and more about the way in which the content was being asked of you. It is a really useful thing on the exam. One thing that I will note, though, is that there are 300 questions. There's a ton of questions in the practice exam, but if you use it every single day, multiple times over and over again, eventually you're going to start to recognize some of those questions. You're going to start to know the answers by rote. And so I would recommend not overusing this tool. And certainly if you get all 300 questions right because you've done the practice exam 50 times, I don't know that that counts as being fully prepared. So Ashley's recommendation to use it kind of the way I did, which is I answered the practice exam, took a look at where I was doing really well based on just my own knowledge and where I had some real gaps, and I focused my studies and planned my studies accordingly. I'll be candid, I didn't study a ton. Like Edna, I did a couple of hours here and there. I made sure to refer to the materials, and I used the CFRE exam as kind of a barometer for my own success at the end. And the last thing I'll say, I'm a huge proponent for this. There is a lot of pressure. I think there are, and you might be seeing other people posting on CFRE, in study group channels or on LinkedIn or in my CFRE, the community forums about all of the ways in which they're studying. And you might be thinking, gosh, I'm not doing all of that. Am I doing enough? I think the most important thing is to remember how you study best. Are you a visual learner? Well, then look up articles, watch videos. Are you an auditory learner? Listen to podcasts and videos. Are you a learner that really does by reading and highlighting and taking your own notes and really inquiring by materials? Well, do that. And if you're a material that really needs to bounce, or a learner that really needs to bounce ideas off of somebody, then a study group might be best for you. I am not a discursive learner. I like articles and videos and those kinds of things. And that's how I framed my study. So it's just really my last piece of advice is don't feel pressured to study a certain way because you're seeing, oh my gosh, well, that's listed on the website. Study in the way that's best for you, and the amount that's best for you at the time that's best for you. And as long as you commit to studying somewhat, I think you probably will be set up for better success than if you kind of procrastinate on it too much.
Excellent. Thank you, Dane. Very, very useful advice from both Edna and Dane there. So, take the word from the people who have been in your shoes. They know. All right. And so with that, we're going to head into our next question break. And Paul, we probably have time for about 2 or 3 good questions here.
All right, let's see. So one question that I'm getting is, Dane, you referenced a podcast. Can you share perhaps what podcast you listen to?
Oh, I did study for the exam 5 years ago, or unfortunately, so that I would be hard pressed to remember some, but there are some really excellent fundraising podcasts out there, and there are a ton of free resources like free webinars. I'm in Canada. There's a website called Charity Village that offers free webinars all the time. I guarantee that there is resources. AFP does all kinds of webinars that are either free access or very, very low cost access on variety of different topics, both at the global level and at your local chapter. Those are some really solid examples. If there's a conference nearby that you think you can hop on to, whether that's digital or in person, there's a ton of resources. Of course, the ones listed on the CFRE International website, the books and resources there are going to be most directly relevant to the full content of the exam. But if you've got like one particular thing that you need to focus on, I do a Google search and I guarantee you can maybe find an article or a website or a recording of a webinar that might speak to that specific thing that you might need a little bit of polishing up on.
And we do have some participants asking if they can connect with Dane and Edna on LinkedIn. So
Yes,
hopefully that's okay, great. So feel free to connect with them,
absolutely.
guys. Okay, our next question is, how common is it to have to take the exam more than once?
Good question. So it changes every test window. It does fluctuate. Most people are successful. Well, let me say it this way. The exam has a 70 to 80% pass rate. And I'm going to tell you right now that in the people who don't pass, there is a large chunk of people who just rocked into the test center and didn't study. And they thought, I'm amazing and I'm going to rock this. And then they are very wrong. I once met a woman at a conference who came up to me and said, I failed your exam 3 times. And I said, can you tell me how you studied? And she said, I don't have time to study. I don't study. So, think about that when you are thinking about the pass rate.
Great. If I'm planning to write the exam in the fall but won't complete all prerequisite application requirements prior to until later in the spring, can I submit the application now?
So you have to meet all the requirements before you can submit. So once it's ready to go in the spring, then that would be when you would go ahead and submit it. All right,
Okay,
well, thank you, Paul.
thanks.
I appreciate it. All right,
Thank
and
you.
now we'll jump back in. We've got a lot to cover, and I realize we have 13 minutes left, so I'm gonna move and groove. Improve your study mindset. There's a lot of research out there that how you think about studying affects how effective that studying is. If you think, oh my God, I don't want to study, it's such a drag, I have all these things I'd rather be doing, your outcome is going to be really different to somebody who thinks, this is my chance to take time to invest in myself. I'm going to feel more confident when I train junior staff going forward. I'm working towards this credential that's going to unlock these career benefits for me. I'm going to study at the kitchen table when my kids are studying, and it'll be a family thing. You're going to have very different outcomes, right, depending on what your mindset is. So try to get into that good frame of mind. If you have test anxiety, it's totally, totally normal. The best ways to beat test anxiety are to adequately prepare and not cut corners. Remember that in this moment today, you are smarter and more experienced than you have ever been, right? So don't think about all the mistakes you made in your job the first 2 years, right? That's behind you. Right now, you have never been smarter or more experienced in the fundraising field. Forget negative past test experiences. People tell me this all the time. I'm not a good test taker. When did you last take a test? 1996. Okay, that's been a minute, okay? So if you feel that it was difficult for you to take exams in the past, do not get hung up on that, right? You're a new person, you're studying. We've told you exactly what you need to know to prepare properly. Remember as well that you have ample time for this exam. You have 4 hours and most people finish it in under 3. You are not going to be in a time crisis by any means on exam day. I want to talk here about requesting an accommodation. If you need an accommodation because you are dyslexic, you have a mobility issue, something like that that would affect your ability to take the exam, you are able to request an accommodation. This can be done, should be done up to 60 days before your test date, because we want to make sure that we can adequately ensure that whatever accommodation you need can be met. So just know that if you do have an accommodation, we are aware and we want to ensure everyone has the best test taking experience possible. The day before the exam, this is what you should do. Consider taking off work. Even if you're going to take that exam on a Saturday, you want to be sure that you are in the best frame of mind. I don't want you to have a terrible Friday at work, and then you're thinking about it that night, and then the next morning you go to take the exam and we've been thrown off kilter, right? Take the day off work before the exam. Review your notes that day. Obviously, it's not time to start studying, but take the day off. Reread your notes and glossary. Know your route to the test center. A lot of people will do a dry run, driving there, taking public transit, whatever, but make sure you know that route to the test center and if you need money for parking. When you get to the test center, you need to be there 45 minutes early, okay? So keep that in mind when you're doing your dry run, because if you're gonna be, going during rush hour, it might be a little different, but you do not wanna be late because the check-in process is something that takes a little bit of time. We had the question about taking the exam remotely. So here is how this works. You have two options. One is from your home or office, and it's with a product called OnView. You use it on your own computer. The second option is in person at a test center. And if you don't listen to anything I say today, this is the most important thing I'm going to tell you all day. Go to the test center. You have a higher chance of passing the exam if you go to the test center, because the test center is designed to be a distraction-free area and your home is not. We see people, we had somebody last year take the exam from home and their home internet went out when they had 9 questions left. Don't put yourself in that position. If you do decide to take it from your home or office, we understand with COVID and mobility issues, that may be your best avenue. Just know that you will need to ensure that your computer can pass the systems check, and you have to remain in the room the entire time except during that designated break time. You cannot get up and use the restroom. You cannot get up to meet the Amazon package delivery guy. You cannot do any of that. You have to stay in the room. No pets, people, or cell phones can be in the room. So we had someone whose husband walked into the room where she was taking the exam to grab a pair of glasses he left in there, and the exam was invalidated because they don't want people whispering or passing notes. There's no food, drink, or medication where you're taking the exam. They don't want you spilling stuff on your computer and creating a problem. And there will be an online proctor watching you through your webcam, so you must have strong enough internet that you can have that webcam connected at all times. If you go, what did I say over here? At the test center, you are recommended to wear layers, and you can use the restroom at any time. You can get up because there's a person in the room that's a proctor, so you can get up. You will be given scratch paper and a whiteboard. So if you're the kind of person that has done a lot of research on test taking, you know that one of the top test taking tips is whatever concept you find to be most difficult, as soon as you get down in front of that exam, write it out next to you before test anxiety takes your brain anywhere, okay? And at the test center, they will let you have that scratch paper and whiteboard. At home, you will not be allowed to have that. At the exam center, people will be taking a variety of exams, and there will be a water cooler so that you can get up and have a drink whenever you like. This is roughly what one of the test centers looks like: individual testing stations and security cameras. If you want to find your nearest test center, go to pearsonview.com/CFRE and type in your postal code or zip code, and it will populate this list for you of all of the test centers near you and a map. On the day of the exam, so for those 2% of people who are finished studying, this is, hopefully your exam day is coming up soon. You need to take 2 forms of ID, and one must be government issued. One must have a signature and photo. And when we approve your application, you get what's called an ATT letter, authorization to test letter, and the exam center has this. Your name and the ID must match that. So if you get married or have a name change for some reason between the time you submit your application and the time you take your exam, contact our office. In person, there will also be a locker. So that's where you're going to put your phone and your keys and all that. If you have glasses, they're going to possibly have you take them off and check that they're not Google Glass. So it is very strict. There are a number of items that are not permitted in the testing area, whether you take it from home or in person. One is books, food, drinks, calculators, medication, right? That's the stuff, the medication, that's what you're going to get on your 10-minute break. Papers of any kind, cell phones, watches, none of that is allowed. So just keep that in mind. When you get to the test center, you will have the option to do a tutorial of the system. And this is just so that you get familiar with what these computer screens look like. You don't have to do this. If you do decide to do it, I'm going to go through really quickly here what some of these look like. So you can see here there's this time remaining countdown so that you will always know how much time is left. You will always know what question you are on in regards to that 100 question section that you're in. And you will be able to move easily back and forth throughout this exam. Once you finish, you will have your score emailed to you within 48 hours. This usually happens much faster, but 48 hours is pretty much the max. Within 1 week, you will get a digital badge. You may have seen these on LinkedIn and Twitter. They're very popular there. It's a way to announce to your network that you have become a CFRE, and there's no charge for that. And then at the end of each test window, we mail the certificates in a batch. So if you become a CFRE on January 15th, right, the first day you could become a CFRE this year, just know that your certificate is not going to get mailed until March when the test window ends. If you are unsuccessful on the exam, there is a retake fee of $375 US, a 30-day wait period, and there's a maximum of 3 attempts on that one application that you did. So if you are unsuccessful more than 3 times, you will need to submit a fresh application. All right, we've got 3 minutes. So I'm going to bring Edna back for her advice for a minute, and then we'll give Dane a minute, and then maybe we can squeeze in a final question. So Edna, take us away with your advice.
Yes, so we've discussed this before. Don't freak out if it's been a long time since you've taken a standardized exam, to Ashley's point of, oh, I don't test well, and so on and so on. Now, you're studying for an exam to become a CFRE. I really think that's the proper mindset. If we got freaked out since it was a long time that we bought a house, well, we'd never buy homes. So it's been a long time since I married, then we wouldn't marry. Just do it. Please do not assume that you do not need to study. Your stellar career work experience is not enough. You may be a research and prospect expert and not know the first thing about doing a major gift solicitation in front of a donor. You may know everything that there is to know about doing online and hard copy mail appeals, but you don't know the first thing about writing an endowment agreement. So really open up your minds beyond your expertise and study, because the exam covers 6 different areas. And again, it's best practice. So for example, if you are in charge of volunteer development for your organization and you don't have best practice standards for how you should train your volunteers when they find out sensitive or delicate donor information, that's not okay. And you need to learn what is the best practice when volunteers access donor information. We can all get better and we can all study. And so don't rely just solely on your stellar careers, rather enhance your careers by studying for the exam. Thanks, Ashley.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Edna. And Dane.
I guess my advice is, I know we've got the application window coming up on January 15th, but if you're here and still waffling about, and you haven't really started studying yet, there's no reason not to start planning today for your next window. There really isn't a reason to do it or to not do it. It is free to start filling out the application to see if you qualify, to see if you're ready to go, and to start taking a practice exam and seeing how much of it you get on the first pass through. There's no reason not to start these things today, even if you're not planning to write the exam in the next month. I would recommend that most of all. And even if you don't feel ready, I guarantee that you're probably readier than you think you might be. And all it's going to take is just that extra little effort to get you over the hump. I promise you that you are further down the path than you think you are. I almost guarantee it.
Very sage wisdom. Thank you for that. As somebody one CFRE once said, you're never going to think you're 100% ready, so just do it. If you are able to, January 15th is our next application deadline. Highly recommend that you get your application in for that. Get it out of the way, and you will be eligible to sit for the CFRE exam in any test window that you want to this year. So that's a nice thing. All right, and I know we're just like right at time, but Paul, can you throw one more question and we'll get that in under the wire?
Sure. So I'm waiting for the approval of my application. Should I wait to schedule my test for the approval?
Yes, so you will need to have your application approved, and then we will send you an email then with the instructions for how to schedule your exam date. So great question to end on. Well, thank you so much to Dane and Edna for sharing their viewpoint. I know I've learned a lot from them, and I hope you have too. If you have any questions that come to mind, drop us the line at succeed@cfre.org. We're very responsive. We want to make sure you have all the information that you need to go confidently forward and totally be a boss when it comes to the CFRE exam. So we're wishing you big gifts and a wonderful 2023. Take care. Bye.